15 Golden Age stars who made millions, but not how you think. Who was really the richest face of old Hollywood? The answer isn't the poster you framed or the jawline you envied. Try this. An actress who quit at 26 and married into a principality. A crooner whose orange juice bet outperformed his records. A cowboy who bought a ball club. A silent clown who owned his films like a studio boss. And a name stitched on denim that printed money while the lights were off. Back then, the fortunes that lasted weren't made under the lamps. They were built on oil wells, radio licenses, perfume royalties, land deeds, and profit shares the studios never advertised. If you grew up with Saturday matinees like we did, you know the faces, now meet the balance sheets. Miss one rung, and you'll miss the twist that explains the next. Before we start, lock your guess for number 1 in the comments. No hedging. Number 15, Gloria Swanson, the star who paid her own way. When that face appeared in soft focus, you witnessed power in action. Swanson wasn't just a silent era goddess. She was a deal maker who learned early that fame fades, but contracts don't. In the 1920s, she was among the highest paid people in pictures, negotiating premium salaries at Paramount, and launching her own production banner so she could keep more of what her films earned. Her company, Gloria Swanson Pictures, gave her 50% of profits instead of flat fees. That wasn't common for actresses then. It was gutsy, and it worked. Off camera, she behaved like a one-woman studio, picking material, hiring talent, and protecting her image like an asset. When a lavish project nearly sank her in the early sound years, she refused to play the victim. She tightened spending, moved money into safer ground, and kept working. Decades later, Sunset Boulevard turned her into a legend all over again. And the checks didn't hurt either. By the end of her life, she'd turned star power into staying power. Real wealth built from salaries, smart ownership, and stubborn self-reliance. That line she loved, "I paid the bills," wasn't bragging. It was a business plan. Independence wasn't the only path to a fortune. The next legend turned family money into Hollywood leverage. Number 14, Katharine Hepburn, the heiress who outfoxed the studios. That first time you saw her stride on screen in trousers and talk like she meant every word, that wasn't just style, that was leverage. Katharine Hepburn grew up with old New England security behind her and used it to do what most actresses couldn't. Say no. When a studio tried to box her in, she bought her way out. When critics slapped her with box office poison, she didn't beg for roles. She acquired the rights to a sparkling stage hit and came roaring back on her terms. She treated the business like a business. Instead of long, restrictive studio deals, she engineered one-off arrangements, chose her directors and co-stars, and pushed for back end where it counted. She personally bought the film rights to the Philadelphia Story for $75,000, guaranteeing her control and profit participation. That famous comeback with the Philadelphia Story wasn't luck. It was a chess move. Rights first, deal second, payday third. Over the decades, she kept her fees high, her privacy tight, and her image exactly where she wanted it. 4 Oscars later, she was the rare star who left with more control than she started with, because she never sold it cheap in the first place. Where Hepburn used old money as a shield, our next star wielded scandal like a sword and made it pay handsomely. Number 13, Mae West, the woman who turned censors into publicity agents. Mae's voice purred through radios and made rooms blush. She didn't wait for Hollywood to hand her power. She wrote it, sold it, and owned as much of the payoff as she could. In the middle of the Great Depression, when most folks were counting pennies, she was negotiating figures that made studio men swallow hard. Blockbuster salaries for starring, and extra checks for the words she put in everyone's mouth. She understood that controversy sells if you control it. When moral watchdogs wagged fingers, she leaned in with a wink and a one-liner, and ticket lines got longer. She treated scandal like advertising she didn't have to buy. By 1935, she was earning $300,000 per picture plus script fees, more than most male stars. That attention translated into money, on screen, on stage, and in smart real estate moves that didn't need a spotlight to grow. Mae never played the ingenue who needed rescuing. She wrote herself as the rescuer of her time, her image, and her income. The brass bed jokes were show business. The contracts were the real story. By the time imitators tried to catch up, Mae had already cashed the check and moved on. While Mae turned controversy into cash, the next name found an even more dramatic exit strategy, one that exchanged Hollywood spotlights for actual crowns. Number 12, Grace Kelly, the star who married a fortune. Grace commanded that cool hush that fell over theaters when her face filled the screen. In just a few years, she accomplished what most spend a lifetime chasing: an Oscar on the mantle, top billing in Hitchcock thrillers, and a salary that made studios behave. Then, she made a decision almost no one expected. She walked away at 26 and married a prince. People skip the financial details when they tell the fairy tale. Grace didn't just gain a title. She stepped into a sovereign city built on tourism, casinos, and real estate. Her $2 million dowry was just the beginning. Monaco's royal holdings included prime Mediterranean real estate and casino revenues that generated millions annually. Her wedding brought a traditional dowry, but the long-term windfall was access to Monaco's vast family holdings and influence, assets that would outlast any box office run. While Hollywood juggled contracts, Princess Grace turned public grace into private stability, foundations, arts patronage, and a carefully protected image that never felt cheap or overexposed. Short career, long shadow, lasting fortune. That's the Grace story worth remembering. If marrying into wealth was one way to secure a fortune, staying in the game with perfect discipline was another. Enter Hollywood's most careful calculator. Number 11, Cary Grant, the gentleman who outsmarted the system. Grant strolled on screen in perfect suits and made rooms feel lighter. But his secret weapon wasn't just charm, it was discipline. While most stars signed their freedom away for steady studio paychecks, he kept his options open. Fewer long contracts, more one-off deals, fees when he wanted them, and, when it made sense, a slice of the upside that kept paying after the premiere. He lived the part of the gentleman while balancing books like a shopkeeper. Friends joked he watched nickels as carefully as executives watched millions. He bought carefully, held patiently, and let time do the heavy lifting. By the 1960s, he was earning $700,000 per picture, plus percentage deals that often doubled his take. When acting no longer interested him, he didn't cling. He pivoted into business, lending his name and brain to boardrooms, including a high-profile cosmetics house, where the returns were quieter but steadier than applause. Grant never needed tabloid noise to feel successful. He picked scripts the way a careful investor picks stocks, only if the story and the terms were right. By the end, the legend on screen matched a real fortune off screen. A gentleman's portfolio built on restraint, leverage, and knowing when to walk away. Speaking of knowing when to walk away, no one did it more dramatically or profitably than the woman who made mystery her greatest asset. Number 10, Greta Garbo, the enigma who kept the money. Those eyes, that hush. The world leaned in when Garbo appeared. She didn't chase fame, she banked it. In the late 1920s and 30s, while studios tossed contracts like confetti, she negotiated from a position almost no actress had: take it or leave it terms and paydays that stunned the front office. $250,000 for a single picture when the country was counting pennies? She earned it. Then, quietly put it to work. Garbo refused the circus. No endless parties, no golden drain on the wallet. She lived small and invested big: stocks, bonds, solid real estate, then stepped away at 36 with her fortune intact. Her Manhattan co-op on East 52nd Street, bought in 1953, appreciated from $38,000 to over $8 million by the 1980s. While others fought time, she let privacy do the compounding. She maintained a modest daily life in a high, light-filled Manhattan apartment, while her portfolio grew as the flashbulbs moved on. People called her mysterious. Call it discipline. She guarded her image the way a careful saver guards principle, never spending down the thing that made everything else possible. When the ledgers finally closed, it wasn't just legend she left behind. It was real, enduring wealth built on premium fees, rights leverage, and the courage to say no when yes was easier. Stars are remembered for noise. Garbo proved silence pays even better. From one kind of silence to another kind of sound. The next entry turned a warm voice into a diversified empire that stretched far beyond entertainment. Number 9. Bing Crosby, the crooner who turned hits into assets. Gathering around radios at Christmas meant hearing that voice. Crosby didn't just sell records, he bought his future. While studios counted tickets, he quietly stacked revenue streams, radio and television deals, profit slices from films, and one of the shrewdest moves of the era, backing new recording technology that changed how America listened. Those early stakes paid him long after the curtain fell. He treated fame like seed money. Ranch land and real estate, he bought early and held. Oil and other ventures, he diversified. Even sports, small ownership positions that grew while he kept working. His investment in Minute-Maid orange juice returned 50 times his initial stake when Coca-Cola bought the company. On paper, he looked like a singer. In practice, he was a portfolio manager with a microphone. He planned for the long haul, trusts and structures that kept wealth compounding while the rest of Hollywood chased headlines. The warm baritone lives in memory, but the real lesson is discipline. He let royalties, rights, and smart bets do the heavy lifting. By the end, the Christmas King had turned seasons of nostalgia into a lifetime of income. Quick check. Did your number 1 survive so far? Type still locked if you're sticking with your guess. We're just getting warm. While Bing diversified into technology and oil, the next entertainer had an even simpler strategy. Buy dirt cheap and wait for California to grow around it. Number 8. Bob Hope, the comedian who bought tomorrow. Holiday specials and Oscar nights meant Bob Hope's one-liners and steady paychecks. Hope turned variety hours, sponsor deals, and entertainment into cash flow, then did something most entertainers never considered. He plowed money into land long before the crowd arrived. Tracts in the San Fernando Valley, wide swaths around Palm Springs. While the rest of Hollywood measured fame in applause, he measured it in acres that quietly multiplied in value. He kept calendars full and books tidy, radio to film to television. He made each new medium pay without burning out his audience. By the 1980s, his 27,000 acres in the San Fernando Valley were worth over $50 million. He entertained a country, then made sure his family's future was secured by compounding interest. People joked he could split $1 3 ways. That precision is how you turn punchlines into property lines, and property lines into generational wealth. The laughs were loud, the balance sheet was louder. Hope's approach was flashy, big land deals, big publicity. The next cowboy took the opposite approach, quiet contracts and even quieter wealth building. Number 7, Randolph Scott, the cowboy who quietly got rich. Saturday. Matinees meant that tall, quiet presence riding into frame and settling trouble without raising his voice. That same calm ran through Randolph Scott's money management. While other stars flashed paychecks, he built a fortune you couldn't see. One careful contract at a time, and a stack of real estate that paid long after the credits. He headlined more than 100 pictures, many as an independent, which meant better terms and a piece of the take. Offset, he bought early in booming Southern California, held when others flipped, and let the city grow around his deeds. His Beverly Hills estate, purchased for $75,000 in the 1940s, was worth over $2 million by the 1970s. No mansions for show, no spending to prove a point, just discipline. Steady beats flashy. Scott didn't chase every trend or beg studios for love. He picked his roles, protected his upside, and let time and property values do the heavy lifting. By the end, the soft-spoken cowboy had out-earned plenty of loud legends. From movie contracts to television gold, the next family man discovered that the small screen could pay bigger than the silver screen if you structured the deal right. Number 6, Fred MacMurray, the family man who banked TV residuals. My Three Sons meant settling in after dinner with television's most dependable dad. MacMurray looked the part of America's most reliable man, and he handled money the same way. Before television, he'd already cashed big checks in film noir and adventure pictures, Double Indemnity, The Kane Mutiny, Disney's The Shaggy Dog, and The Absent-Minded Professor. The masterstroke wasn't just the paydays, it was how he structured them. He worked like a businessman in a suit, not a dreamer in a bungalow. Short, efficient shooting blocks kept him available for other projects, calm negotiations. When television started raining money, he ensured the rain didn't stop after first runs, residuals that kept dripping long after seasons ended. His My Three Sons residual deal earned him over $1 million annually through the 1980s, decades after filming. That steady stream, plus a sprawling Sonoma County ranch and conservative investments, turned America's dad into one of the quiet heavyweights of golden age wealth. MacMurray lived comfortably, worked consistently, and let time compound his earnings. By the time lights dimmed, the family man had built a family fortune. Television residuals were one path to lasting wealth. But the next icon wrote a different playbook entirely. One where the star didn't just perform in the show, but owned every frame of Number 5, Charlie Chaplin, the mogul in baggy pants. That first waddle across screen made audiences laugh without words. Then came respect. Chaplin wasn't just a performer. He was a one-man studio who learned that real money lives behind the camera, where contracts, ownership, and rights exist. While others begged for raises, he set records, then set terms. He wrote, directed, starred, scored, and most importantly, kept control of the films themselves, so revenue never stopped flowing. He chased independence the way other men chased applause. He teamed with equals, built his own distribution pipeline, and guarded his negatives like a bank guards its vaults. His United Artists deal gave him 50% of gross receipts, plus complete creative control. Unprecedented terms that earned millions per picture. Even storms, public battles, politics, damaging headlines couldn't dent a library that kept earning every time new audiences discovered The Kid, City Lights, or Modern Times. Salary is nice. Ownership is freedom. Chaplin took the silliest hat in show business and turned it into an asset portfolio, one that outlived the Nickelodeon, the Talkie, and most rivals. By Curtain's End, the little tramp had become the richest kind of artist, the kind who owns the work that made him. While Chaplin built his empire in cutting rooms and studios, the next legend took ownership to an entirely different level, literally owning the airwaves that carried his voice. Number 4, Gene Autry, the cowboy who built a corporation. White hat, steady voice, and the promise that good guys win. That was Gene Autry. He sang his way into living rooms, then turned fame into equity. While other stars waited on studio payrolls, Autry stacked income streams. Records, movies, radio, television, keeping ownership wherever possible. December alone was a business model. His recording of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer rang cash registers every winter, while other months handled additional revenue. He didn't just perform on air, he owned airtime. Stations under his banner, production with his name on doors, and licensing that sold guitars, lunchboxes, and cap guns coast to coast. Then bigger moves. Real estate, hospitality, a ball club that turned a cowboy into a chairman. His ownership of the California Angels baseball team, purchased for $2.5 million in 1961, was worth over $40 million by the 1980s. When California grew, his holdings grew with it, and books improved yearly. Autry kept his image squeaky clean because it was good business, but contracts were steel. He bought early, held long, and let patience do the lifting. By the time the ride slowed, the singing cowboy had built something that didn't need a microphone to earn. If you're surprised already, you're not alone. The last 3 will test every hunch. Don't change that guess yet. Autry proved you could build empires with wholesome family entertainment, but the top 3 took different approaches entirely. The next legend turned raw glamour into something unprecedented, a personal brand that outlasted beauty itself. Number 3, Elizabeth Taylor, the beauty who built a business. When those violet eyes met the camera, you were looking at a star who didn't just act, she negotiated. Elizabeth Taylor shattered pay ceilings with that $1 million Cleopatra check. But real fortune came after costumes were packed away. She turned glamour into a brand before that word lived on perfume counters. White Diamonds wasn't vanity. It was a money engine, selling year after year because people trusted her name. She understood assets like a studio head. Jewels weren't just sparkle. They were value on velvet trays, pieces that could be displayed, insured, and, when timing was right, sold at record prices. Real estate, too. She moved like a seasoned investor. Buy smart, hold steady, let stories appreciate with properties. Her White Diamonds fragrance line generated over $1 billion in retail sales across 3 decades. While tabloids obsessed over 8 marriages, she quietly turned spotlight into leverage, higher quotes, better terms, and worldwide recognition that gave every venture a head start. Taylor didn't wait for studios to make her rich. She made herself a franchise and let markets do the counting. By the end, the star everyone thought they knew had built one of the era's biggest personal fortunes, powered by beauty, brains, and contracts that knew exactly what her name was worth. Taylor mastered the art of personal branding decades after someone else wrote the original blueprint. The woman at number 2 didn't just become a mogul, she invented what it meant to be one. Number 2, Mary Pickford, the boss who invented ownership. Theater kids holding their breath for Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm witnessed real pull in action. But the story isn't the curls, it's the contracts. Pickford was the first superstar to make Hollywood pay like a partner, not an employee. $10,000 a week when 10,000 meant mansions. 7-figure bonuses when millions could buy studios. Then the unthinkable. She helped found United Artists to own her films and keep profits that never stop trickling. She treated stardom like a company. Scripts chosen for receipts, not just reviews. Marketing that sold tickets from small towns to big cities. Behind scenes, she protected negatives like gold bars because they were. Her United Artists co-founding deal gave her 25% of company profits, plus complete ownership of her film library. Even Pickfair, the home she shared with Douglas Fairbanks, was more than glamour. It was a brand that made every premiere feel like a coronation. She didn't wait for fairness. She priced it. When the silent era faded, she pivoted, producing, investing, giving away more than most ever earn. Adjusted for today, her haul sits near the very top, built on the idea that salary ends, but ownership endures. Studios didn't make the stars. Pickford proved the star could make the studio and keep the ledger in the black. Every fortune on this list required some form of performance, some bow to the entertainment industry. But at number 1, we find someone who flipped the entire script, using a legendary name not to chase Hollywood, but to make Hollywood irrelevant. Number 1, Gloria Vanderbilt, the name that turned style into cash flow. Department store windows in the late 70s and early 80s displayed that looping signature on back pockets. Gloria Vanderbilt didn't build wealth-chasing studio paychecks. She turned a famous surname into a modern brand. Born into money, yes, but she refused to live off nostalgia. She painted, wrote, modeled, and then made the move that changed fashion aisles. Designer jeans that sold because they felt glamorous without feeling out of reach. Licensing, fragrance, home goods. The name became a profit engine that worked while she slept. She treated her identity like intellectual property. Instead of renting out her image for quick fees, she structured deals that paid on every unit shipped. Real estate and art rounded out the portfolio. But the lesson is bigger than denim. Her jeans licensing deal with Murjani earned her over $10 million annually at its peak in the early 1980s. She proved you could monetize taste, not just talent, and she did it for decades in a business that burns through trends every season. Some will argue she wasn't a movie star like the rest. Fair enough. But wealth doesn't care which marquee you stood under. Her trajectory, inheritance to enterprise, makes her the most controversial topper on this list, and a reminder that, in the Golden Age and beyond, the richest stories weren't always written on a call sheet. Should number one have to be a screen star, or does money talk? Tell me where you stand. The pattern emerges, clear as day. The biggest fortunes weren't built on applause, they were built on ownership. Gloria Swanson treated her name like a company. Katherine Hepburn priced her independence. Mae West turned outrage into royalties. Grace Kelly traded box office for a principality. Cary Grant chose terms over headlines. Garbo saved instead of spending. Bing Crosby and Bob Hope bought land before maps caught up. Randolph Scott let patience be his partner. Fred MacMurray turned steady work into steady residuals. Charlie Chaplin kept the negatives and the profits. Gene Autry owned the airwaves. Elizabeth Taylor made her name a franchise. And Mary Pickford wrote the rulebook everyone else studied. Fame fades. Contracts compound. Which of these 15 surprised you the most, and why? Drop your answer in the comments. If this brought back good memories, give this a like, tap hype, and share it so more classic film fans find these stories.